Hi, we're going to wrap this carbon bonnet today, and first of all I've cleaned it down with 3M solution just to make sure that it'll stick nicely. This is a 3M print, 3M IJ 1080 with a matte laminate on it, and I'm just going to trim off any excess so that I can get to my corners a bit better. This will be a really rough video, so probably won't be a massive amount of talking in it. I just wanted to get enough media out of the way so I know where I'm starting on this corner and then I can work up. I'm not to use the seat gun just yet, if I can get away with it, and just let the material, fall onto the vehicle as best it can, and then I can adjust it with the heat gun if you really need to. But it's best to let the material follow the natural curves of the car before you start manipulating it. If you get to a point where you can't do any more than use a heat gun, then that's fine. But the material's made to do that, but it's just better if you can let it be as long as possible, really. So I'm just using a combination of squeegee with a thin bit of felt on it, the other side of it sometimes just to push down at it on my thumb. Okay, got to a point now there's a crease in the bonnet, and I think I'm struggling just to get it to full, so I'm going to use the heat gun now, just to help the wrap relax, so you can push it so far, but I'm just heating it up there just a little bit. And then I can smooth it out nicely. So it just kind of got a little bit complicated, and just the heat helps the material relax. It kind of goes back to its original position, and it's just a lot easier to work with, rather than using the heat gun to stretch it, which obviously we all do when we first start wrapping. We're trying to let the material flow over the bonnet, and then let the heat gun kind of return it back to its shape. So if you just want to pan in your lens, you can see how I've kind of got a bit of bagging going on there, and I'm going to struggle to try and lay that down. So what I'm going to do is just heat it up a little bit, and you'll see how the material shrinks. And that means I can get a much better finish now. So we're now at a point where the bonnet goes in lots of different directions, so I'm going to release a bit more of the graphic. So as you can see, we've kind of done the main flat pieces now, and we're just kind of coming up to the arches, which is a bit more tricky because we're bending that way as well as that way, which is always a bit of a nightmare. So I've kind of got my main plane that I want to work away from, and I'm using the heat gun just to reform it. Once it's kind of got a bit, well, it's created a few mountains and ridges, I can smooth it out with my thumb so far, and then I need to kind of go back in with the heat gun, resettle it, and then come back out again. As you can see, it's a bit more of a tricky one now where it's bending out as well as over. There's always a temptation at this point to just heat it really strong and then pull it over the edge, but really it's kind of counterproductive in a way, because eventually the material will, if you put it under too much strain, it'll either the print will start to degrade in quality terms, or it'll stretch back, and obviously then you've got to do the job again. So you're always better to try and do it the hard way, which is just to let the material go down the way it wants to go down, and then there's not as much stretch on the material. So I'm not stretching it at this point, I'm just heating it up. So it is really flexible at this point, but I don't want to pull it, I don't want to stretch it, I just want to get it back into some conform ability there. So this is the first time that we're going to actually use the heat gun to basically cause it to stretch, because now the material is kind of, as you see, it's a bit taut between the two there, and then it's got to go in as well as down. So what I'm going to do is just heat it up a bit, and then I'm going to work it down in a way which is effectively stretching it. So just heat it in a circular motion around about the spot that you're going to stretch, because you need it all to stretch as nice and uniformly as possible. And then we're going to just move this down like that. Just sticking it to the table for the moment for ease. Having had a couple of different trainers on wrapping, I know there's quite a few different ways of doing wrapping, and not all the techniques that I use will be the techniques that you'll have been taught or that you'll do yourself. But obviously, you just work out what's best for yourself, really, and essentially what's best for the job. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing it for. It's for commercial gain, and if we've got to redo the thing a few times, that's not really helping your business. And sometimes as well, I find that it's actually better if you're working a piece and it's just getting a bit frustrating and you can't seem to get anywhere. It's actually best just to pull it back a bit and just start again. And the beauty of this material is that it's got that flexibility. You know, it's just as good second or third time around. I sound like an advocate for 3M, but it is pretty good stuff. Now, if everybody want to pay me to be their advocate, obviously I'll be open to that as well. Pretty much there now. All you need to do is trim up, and in one sense, you kind of feel like you've nearly finished, but often this is the bit when it can all go wrong. So it's obviously the best idea is just to set everything slow and progressively. I've seen, we've done vehicles before where we've stripped them for whatever reason, and see people have cut in on the cars, have cut through onto the paintwork and stuff. So, I'm always really hesitant when it comes to actually trimming onto a car. Often maybe put a bit of masking tape down first, or just break the surface of the laminate and then break the surface of the thing if you really have to. I say I've seen butcher jobs. But I mean, I'm going to cut out a bonnet catch here, and I know that fortunately, because I've got the other one at the other side, I know that I can trim around the edge. I've got a brand new blade, which is always the best way to start. And then I've just burred over the edge so that it's kind of going into the recess a little bit, and then I'm just going to basically push the scalpel blade through, and then I'm going to hold it at an angle, and then just let it run, and then we'll tidy up anything. So I'm not cutting onto the vehicle here. I'm actually using the edge of the vehicle to hold the scalpel away from the vehicle. Fortunately, the graphic has some detail in there that kind of will help forgive some of the wobblier lines, but anything that's really obvious I'll just go back and I'll just kind of take off the edges really, really thinly sliced without hardly breaking the surface of the material. Coming around the edges, I try and never cut on, away the graphic like this. I'll try and get it over the lip so it's got something to hook onto. Unfortunately, this bonnet has a lip at the other side, so I'm going to massage this all the way around, and then if it was on a car, on a vehicle, actually on a car, what I do is probably just pop the bonnet up and trim from underneath. Obviously, with this being on the bench, I can flip it over and I can trim nice and neatly.